But I'm also going to get started because I know that there are a lot of people who just want to access the replay link, and I want to be mindful of your time. You both have to leave. Both of you dogs need to go. Okay. It's like this passive resistance on their part. They're just not responding. Okay, so here's how I want you to think about this. I would actually love you to grab a sheet of paper and a pencil, because as I talk about the process that I use with the women I coach to articulate value, the process I try to practice when I have to talk to people about what I do and what I bring to the table, I really actually want you to think about the conversations that you have about who you are, what your value is, and why you're the best woman for the job, whatever the job is. So if you own your own business, the job might be for whatever your client's need is. It might be the job that your team needs you to do, or the job that your company or a new company or hire is asking you about. And I hope that as you start articulating your own narrative about what your value is as we walk through this process together, you will end tonight with, at the very least, an outline of how to have that conversation the next time you have to have it. So what's really nice is we have a small live group, which allows me to do this, to say, could you unmute yourself for a second and just let us know what it is that you do, right? And I am going to just try to do it in 30 seconds or less, which is an impossible time task. But we do have a lot to talk about. But since you are here, I'm curious. I'm going to start with Jessica. This is to my right, and Jessica is going to go down to Hitomi, who's going to go down to Heather, who's going to go down to Michelle, who needs to connect audio-wise to what's going on, who's going to go up to Sumiti, who's going to go to Vidya, who's going to go to Talia, who's going to go to Janice, who's going to go to Aurelia. All right, and then we'll stop there. But I'm really curious, what is it that you do? And why are you here today to learn about being unforgettable? Jessica, you're on.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm a principal scientist and leading small molecule drug discovery as a biologist at Lundbeck Pharmaceuticals, a brain health company. I think communicating clearly and with clarity about our values and what we bring is critically important, and I find it very challenging to do. So I'm looking forward to learning.
We will get you there. Hitomi, other than the fact that we know each other, why are you here?
Well, that was probably the bottom of the list. I am here. Well, first of all, I am currently a buyer of used lab equipment, and that is what I do as a job. But in terms of my career, I am actually still exploring. So when people especially ask me at networking events, "Hey, tell me, what do you do?" I feel like a buyer is not quite enough to explain who I am, where I am, and where I want to go. But that is something I'm not quite sure how to put it in words. And I would love to have some framework or some invoking questions to get me at least in that route. So that's why I'm here. But also, of course, to meet wonderful people.
Yeah, we will get you there. Sweetie.
Hey, everybody. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I am Sumiti. I'm currently working as a director at a biotech company. What do I do? Who am I? I'm a drug developer, specifically in the field of cell therapy. It's a newly emerging innovative field, and I am very passionate about driving it forward because it could be curative for a lot of diseases. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, if you are able to unmute your phone, can you just tell us a little bit about what you do and why you're here?
Yeah, no, so I am a sales director for a molecular diagnostics company in the oncology arena. And no, I just thought it was an interesting opportunity to learn and grow from you and other people on the phone. And I'm always looking to be a little more articulate and how to express kind of my value. So that's why I'm here.
Great. Well, that sales director background might come in handy at some point. Vidya. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vidya. I've been working as a scientist for the past 10 years. I'm looking to develop myself as an individual, professionally, personally. Um, I've faced many, many people who actually don't take me really seriously, and I don't know why. I have tried my best to straighten my shoulders and act like a little more serious, but nothing works. So I would like to learn from all of you, and especially Alessandra. When she posted how to make yourself unforgettable, I was like, I'm going to that no matter what. So I'm really excited to be here and learn from you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Heather, we're just sharing a little bit about why we're here and what we do.
Yeah. So I'm Heather, and I lead brand and marketing communications for life science, biotech, diagnostics companies. And I'm here because I get why I'm a great hire, but ironically, as a communicator, I seem to have difficulty articulating my value to employers.
It's a real problem. I'll jump in here before going to the last three of you. You know, oftentimes when we talk about women not negotiating for themselves or women not articulating their value, we're constantly pointing to confidence. And although I certainly see issues with confidence, there are a lot of things that we go through in our careers that start to slowly undermine our sense of value, our sense of self. What I found is when you talk to most ambitious, talented, smart women privately, they're really, really good at telling you why they're good and what they're good. So it's not that they lack the confidence to articulate their skill set or what makes them extraordinary. There's something about taking that and putting it in front of the right people, right? Saying it out loud in front of the key decision makers, those linchpin people in your career, in a way, first of all, just saying it, period, and then saying it in a way where they can hear you and where they get it. That's where the breakdown tends to occur. So Heather, you are not alone. And I know you're actually really extraordinary at what you do. It always baffles me when you say this, but it's such a frustratingly common issue. Oh yeah, you're next.
Yeah, hi everyone. I work in clinical trials and have my whole career. And I am here because when I'm usually asked, what do? I tend to describe, and I've actually struggled with even answering this question. I tend to describe what my company does or what I do in my company, like so I tend to describe it more as it relates to my role. And I have actually been told that I should not be doing that. I should be talking about, when you asked us a really, a very specific question, but it was very open-ended. What do you do? Not where do you work or what role do you hold or something like that. And so I didn't even really know how to answer that, honestly. So that's why I just said I work in clinical trials. So anyway, that's why I'm here, and I'm excited to talk more about it.
Yes, I'm terrible. I really am. I'm so sorry because I did this to you. I asked you all the question I hate the most answering, and I'll get to that in a second. So just in order of how you appear on my screen, Janice, you're next, and Aurelia, you will close us off. You will give us a recency effect for remembering things.
Hi everyone, my name is Janice. I also work in biotech at a startup here in Boston. I don't have a science background, and so I'm new to the biotech industry, and I need to practice articulating my value and taking up more space, because my experience is that I tend to not want to take up space and to undervalue my skills and experiences. And so I want to learn how to be better at articulating what I bring to the table. And so I'm also excited to learn more.
Perfect. And Aurelia, last but much really, truly not least.
Well, I'll start off by saying that I love your dog. As you can tell, I'm an avid animal lover. But hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Oralia. I'm an angel investor and I work for an impact fund. So I'm here this evening because I do an amazing job at advocating for other women. I always tell everyone, "Oh, don't be timid. This is your time to shine." But when it's like the light gets turned on me, I'm like, "Oh, I don't know what to say." So that's it.
So thank you so much. And I kind of, but not really, apologize for putting you all on the spot, but I did it for two reasons. One, because you are much better than me at explaining the dozens of reasons why we as women are not always as good as we'd like to be at talking about ourselves and letting other people know how absolutely incredibly talented and amazing we are. But the other thing is to show you how ridiculously difficult it is to actually answer an open-ended, vague, and off-the-cuff question like, so tell me about you. Why are you here? But those questions, what brings you here? What makes you different? What is your value? What is your differentiator, right? What makes you the best woman for the job are questions that we are asked every single day as professional women. And sometimes the questions are asked just the way I put them out there, right? Very clearly. And other times they are implied, right? So what's going on? So what's happening? So, oh, well, this is Talia. She's just joining our team right now. Talia, tell us a little bit about yourself. A few years ago, when I really started to bridge out and build Life in Focus and build this coaching, and changing the model of the way I did things, I realized I needed to network. I needed to become a known entity. Let's start with San Diego, but then internationally, so that people understood that I had something of value to offer and I could make a living off of it. But I hated networking. I hated walking into a room and being asked what I did. I eventually hired a coach who is, as far as I'm concerned, a fantastic coach, and probably as a businesswoman, it is the best decision I ever made for myself. And it took me a very long time. So I coached for years before I ever hired a coach for myself. And I told him the very first time, he and I just presented on this a week ago, and I said, the very first time you met me, you said within about 30 seconds of meeting me, so tell me about yourself. And I don't even know where to start with that question. So I tell you that I was born in the Middle East, that my mother is a first generation French of Italian parents who moved to France between World War I and World War II, that my dad's from Kansas, and that I lived in France most of my life and moved here because I think that's a fascinating part of my history. Or should I tell you that I went to Duke and I got a BA in psychology and graduated cum laude, then got my PhD from another place? Or should I tell you that by trade, I'm a clinical psychologist and that I shifted my career in my mid-30s to coach women and to work with women because I just wanted to get to a place where I could help people take action, not just feel better, but build better lives, right? And that's the one I actually defaulted to. So people would say at networking events, tell me about you, what do you do? And initially with my coach, I worked on this great elevator pitch that on paper sounded beautiful. And I would start, and then I go, well, by trade, I'm a clinical psychologist. And right now, I also am a leadership and confidence coach for women, right? So I would do what all of you did, which is I would start with my title. I would start with my resume, all that information that anybody can find by going onto LinkedIn. And if we're honest, that is exactly where people go right before they meet us for work, right? My elevator pitch really addressed kind of my mission, but it still didn't talk about who I was. So here's what I figured out working with women. I had these amazing, extraordinary women who couldn't talk about who they were. I couldn't really talk about who I was and what I brought to the table, although I did learn how to say that I was really good periodically at certain things. And I wanted to understand why that was happening and how to get past that. So I started thinking about what we do in marketing. That's why for those of you who are in sales, you'll see that there's a bit of this. And I started thinking about me and the women I work with as a brand, right? And this is what I want you to think about yourself. Professionally, you are a brand. And if you think of a really, really good brand, it's not something that's salesy. It's not something that's cheesy. A brand helps you get a very clear sense of what a company or a product is about in the shortest amount of time possible. A brand ideally does this by being as compelling as possible and by tying their value to your needs. And that's what we're going to do today. So the process I want to share with you is, like most of the things I teach, on the surface, very simple. In practice, it's a skill. And so like all skills, all you need to think about is the more you practice it, the better you will get at it. The first thing you have to understand is when somebody asks you about you, what you bring to the table, who you are, what your value is, what they do not want to hear is your resume. What they do not want to hear is what your job titles are, right? That information, again, they can find somewhere else. And that is especially important if you're sitting in an interview because they already have your resume, right, in hand. What they want to hear is what makes you different and what makes you captivating. Now, as women, it's very difficult to start off by telling anybody, you know, I'm amazing at problem solving. I'm amazing at analyzing data. I'm amazing at connecting people. And it's not because we're not, it's because from the time that we've been in diapers, very well-meaning adults and parents have told us to be humble, have told us not to try to outshine other people. And then, unfortunately, those messages have got carried on into our professional life and our life as adults. And what we've seen is, hey, when we're around other women who unabashedly talk about how great they are, unless they're celebrities who are women, who are hashtag women supporting women and elevating women, we look at them and we're like, who thinks he is? And if you're honest with yourself, you know that you've come across those women who walk in and off the bat just seem so confident. And on the one hand, you want to be like them. And on the other hand, you kind of resent them, right? And so we recognize that we feel that kind of displeasure, that distaste for that brash self-promotion. And we don't want anybody to feel that way about us. But the other reason we don't do it is because we witness these types of women being mislabeled and sometimes being punished for those things. So for example, research bears out that women who self-promote, women who talk about their accomplishments in I versus we form are labeled as not being as hireable or as likable as other women. So what are we to do? On the one hand, people like me say, you need to speak up, you need to articulate your value, you need to tell the world how great you are. But on the other hand, people who do that get punished for doing it. So I found a workaround. Because as much as I would like to say, screw it all and just do it the way you should do it without having to think about it, the whole point in communicating is being heard and is having your message received by the other party. So we have to communicate in ways that can actually resonate. So the first step to being unforgettable is to learn to be fascinating. And the first way you can learn to be fascinating is simply this. When somebody asks you about you, especially actually in the context of an interview, instead of talking about what you do or about your resume and your background, start talking about what you love doing. Now, if I'm in an interview, let me explain. If somebody says, explain to me why you were the best person for the job, I'm not going to come in and say, well, I have 17 years as an entrepreneur in my business and I've done this and this and this. I'm going to come in and talk about what I love doing, but I'm really actually talking about my skills. You know what I love doing? I love connecting with other human beings. I love meeting people and very rapidly trying to figure out who they are so that they can feel really comfortable and getting them to a place where they trust me and we can have this real connection, right? And I'm actually really, really good at building rapport. Rapport is the skill. What I love doing with rapport is connecting with people. I started off talking about the things I love for a specific reason. Hey, when you talk about the things you love, you start to light up. Right? A huge mistake that we often make when we interview is we start talking about only what we're good at. I'm really good at accounting. I'm really, really good at accounting. I'm so good at accounting that I kept my business books down to the cent for years until my accountant made fun of me for it. But I hate accounting. I hate accounting so much that when it comes to my therapy patients, at least, I will put off accounting for like a month at a time. And they will tell me, I owe you money, Dr. Wall. I need to pay you, Dr. Wall. Can you tell me how much I owe you, Dr. Wall? And then I have to sit down for a couple of hours on a weekend and do my accounting. If I tried to sell accounting as a skill, despite being really good at it, this is the way I would look. One thing I'm really good at is accounting and numbers and being precise with numbers, right? And the spreadsheets that go with it. And there's nothing compelling about that. But when I talk, and I'm not faking this, honestly, when I talk about connecting with people, this is what happens, right? Like I love being able to walk into a room with somebody you don't know and getting to a place where within a few minutes, you get them and they feel at ease and they start talking to you about things that they didn't even think they were going to talk about with another person, right? As you get excited about the things you love doing that you are really good at, your face lights up. And the person watching you, they, just like you, have mirror neurons in their brains. And half of you, 3/4 of you in this room will be better able to explain that than me. But because of those mirror neurons, as you smile, they start to smile, right? As your eyes open up and you get excited, they start to get excited. And there's this process that happens where as they start smiling, as they start getting excited without understanding why, they start to feel better. They start to release neurotransmitters that make them feel better. So simply by you talking about what you love doing, and then we're going to build in why you're amazing and awesome at it. Simply by starting to talk about what you love doing, you start making somebody else unconsciously feel better. And just that makes you unforgettable. It's not enough, right? We're not going to just make people feel good and make them smile because that will get the point across. But it's the first step. Think about pre-pandemic, all those holiday networking events. You go because you need to go. You go because part of the time it's going to be fun. You go because you're going to connect with a few people you want to see. But there are like a dozen of them in 2 weeks. And they're always at the end of a long work day. And you have to put yourself together. And yes, you'll be able to drink probably pretty cheap wine for free. But it's exhausting. And you talk to person after person in this very awkward kind of situation where you're trying to talk to them, but you're really tired and your brain is distracted. And then you fall upon that one person who for some reason is just fascinating. He comes to you and you start talking and immediately there's a connection. When you start talking about the things that you love doing, this is the transformation you create. And at the end of the night, at the end of those 12 networking events, at the end of the winter season, you're the person they remember. And they might not remember everything about you, but they'll remember that you made them feel good for a moment, that you gave them a moment of levity. So now let's bring that back into a professional context that makes sense for articulating your value. The reason I have women, the reason I have anybody start with talking about what they love doing, that they're really good at, is A, because you make people feel better, but B, we all want to be hired to do the things that we love doing. We don't just want to be hired to do the things we're good at. Imagine something that you're really, really good at that you hate doing. And if you can think of what that is, I'm going to ask you to type it in the chat. Now imagine having to walk into work, and most days that's on your to-do list. How long do you stay in that job before you just want to like call and sit, right? How well are you going to perform in that role if your first thought when you have to go to work is, oh, I don't want to go? It's miserable. I actually felt like that for a while about being a psychologist, which is what led to life and focus therapy. And then I changed the way I was approaching my psychology practice. So I don't feel that way about going in and talking to people anymore, right? But none of us last very long, but some of us have to, because we have bills, because we have responsibilities, because we just don't have the leisure of leaving our jobs and following our passions. So if you're going to be talking about who you are, and if you're going to want people to remember you, to be unforgettable for things you want to be remembered for, not for things you wish people would forget, like the tasks you don't want to do. And for me, that would be accounting, not just accounting. There's a number of them. social media posting. I'm good at it, but I don't want to do it for anybody else but myself. And sometimes I'm asked when I'm on committees, can you do our posts? Can you do our social media content? I'm like, oh, it's a lot of work. I'll continue doing it just for me and for nobody else. So those are the two reasons. Step one, be fascinating. And that step starts with talk about what you love doing that you're really good at. So if somebody feels brave right now, I would like a volunteer. And here's what I'm going to, I just made the chat, the whole thing. Here's what I'm going to ask of the volunteer. All I'm asking is for you to share, unmuted, one thing that you love doing that you're really good at. And I'm going to show you how to articulate that whole thing so that you are both compelling, but you don't feel like you're being cocky or salesy, or potentially could come across in a way that would lead to somebody having an unfavorable opinion of you. Aha, he told me his hands up, go.
Oh, what I love doing is so many, but one that I really love doing is learning. Something that really is very new, and it includes something creative. Every time I dive into something new, I love it. I want to tell people about it. I want to share it. I love learning new things, and the topic is very diverse.
Okay.
That what
and are you?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So we start. So I would start. Let's say I'm in a job interview. They say, "Tell me about you," and I would say, "Well, if I'm feeling really frisky, I might say, well, what do you want to know?" And then they might say something like, "Well, tell me what makes you different. Tell me what your skill is. Tell me, tell me something you're really good at, right?" And then I might start by saying, one thing I love doing is learning. I love learning really complex, new, cutting edge things. I love learning. Now, I want you to think about, if I'm trying to talk to somebody and the next thing that's coming out of my mouth is, and I'm really good at it, right? Then what comes from that? Like I think loving to learn is actually a skill. It can be translated into skill, right? So
really good at organizing what I learned. So
okay.
I'm very good at putting what I learned into presentations. And I'm really good at trying to convey that to people who don't know it. So complex, abstract ideas into something that is tangible, even like almost you can feel it type of thing. I think I'm really good at also making that person excited into that context.
Right? So you might start and you might say, one thing I love learning. And when you start talking about it, right, you can see your eyes go up because you're thinking not that right brain, like technical thinking, but you're starting to enter more that left brain. And you start to think about it. You're like, I love learning, and your face lit up. I love learning these really complex things. And the thing is, I'm actually really good at learning because I am really, really good at taking information, being able to understand what the key points in that information are, organizing those key points in a manner that's relevant, and then teaching those other people so that you can disseminate like the knowledge in what I just learned. Right? And think about what you do. Think of how important that skill is, the ability to take data, to distill it for the most important, crucial factors in that data, to organize it and to redisseminate it to other people so that they don't have to go read all the stuff that you read. They can just get like the click note version of that information, right? So this is the thing. If you can go into the chat and just start thinking about what is something that people need to know about me? What is a skill I want to share with other people? Maybe it's a boss. Maybe it's your whole team. Maybe it's a future employer. Maybe you have a networking event coming up, right? And you want the audience that you're going to face to leave knowing something about you. You're going to think about a skill you have, something that you love doing, that you're really, really good at. And then what you're going to do is you're going to figure out how to talk about what you love doing. And then the language you're going to use is, you know what I love doing? And I'm really good at it. Right? I love doing this. Right? If I put just basic skill, I might say, you know what I love doing? I know this is strange. This isn't true, by the way. I love spreadsheets. I do. I love taking data and organizing it. I love the end result. It's like creating order out of chaos, right? And it opens this whole pathway to solving problems. I love creating spreadsheets, and I'm actually really good at it, right? I could think of jobs where that would be an important skill to share with other people. The beauty with this technique, with starting with what you love and then talking about how you're really good at it, is twofold. By talking about what you love, you're exciting people. You get excited, they're getting excited. By the way, right now we're virtual, so there are all these pieces we miss. But if you and I were in the same room together and within 8 feet of each other, so post-COVID, and I were talking about these things, my heart rate would go up and your heart rate would go up in response to my heart rate going up. And I'm pretty sure I'm probably, hopefully the good, not smelly kind, secreting some pheromones as I get really excited. And those, without you realizing, would also be impacting you, right? So as I get excited, I communicate that excitement. It's contagious. And I leave people remembering me in really positive ways. But the other thing is, by starting with something you love, it allows me then to transition to this thing that as women is sometimes very difficult for us to do, which is to then say, I'm amazing at this. I am amazing at this, right? Now that's not enough. And now I've just walked into a room and I've told you that I love doing this thing, and I've told you that I'm really good at it, but I haven't started connecting the dots for you. I haven't started making it relevant for you. So the second step to being unforgettable is you have to connect dots for people. And I like to say, and it might not be fair, but I'm a little jaded about humanity at times, that people are really lazy. And they don't want to figure out on their own how this skill you have translates into some kind of meaningful impact. So it is up to you to communicate that to them. So step 1 is be fascinating, and step 2 is connect the dots. The connect the dot piece, think of it as your technical articulation of value. The impact that you're discussing would be true regardless of who you're talking about. So if I say something like, I'm really good at solving problems, and I might say, or I'm really good at solving puzzles. Right? A lot of the women I work with are very analytical, they're strategic, they're really good at solving puzzles. They don't think about that skill in those terms, but it really is what it is. And I might say what that means is, or because I have that skill, what I can do with it is, and I'm going to talk about how solving puzzles can solve problems for other people. Now, solving puzzles is very vague, chose it on purpose. So in my job, I might say, you know, one thing I'm really good at is actually connecting dots. And specifically what I mean is I'm good at hearing somebody's story, getting a lot of data that seems on the surface to be really disconnected, and then understanding how things connect and how things create patterns or dynamics. And because of that, I can really help people rapidly understand what's getting in their way. Things that on their own, they're just not able to see. I might not even be able to see them on my own if it were my life. But in other people's lives, it's so easy for me to just walk in and go, oh, this is happening for the following reasons. Look at this, right? That is the impact that ability to connect dots or to see patterns or to process information, right? I can present that skill in any way I want to. That is the impact that I have with that skill. Okay. So step 1, be fascinating. Step 2, connect the dots. You have to explain to the person you're talking to how this skill translates into an impact. And that impact is, it's universal, meaning it's not specific to the person you're talking to, right? It's not even specific to any industry necessarily. Although if you want to, you can make it specific to the industry and the person you're talking to. So Hitomi, I really appreciate you going first. I want to see if I can get somebody else who feels brave enough, courageous enough right now to try adding the second piece. You know, what I really love doing is X, and I'm actually really good at it. And because I'm really good at X, I can. And now we're talking, I can make this impact. I can have this impact. I can. And now I'm really talking about what impact that skill has, what I can do with it, why it even matters. That's another way of thinking about it. You can sit there and say, I'm really good at creating spreadsheets. I'm really good at learning. I'm really good at rapport. I'm really good at connecting with people. So what? Who cares? This is your time to explain to people why it matters, what the impact is. So, who's going to volunteer?
I'll volunteer. I took notes. I'm going to try to follow this. Okay. So I would say that I love connecting with people, and I'm really good at just reaching out. Like, I'm not timid when it comes to being in a room full of people. I'm just really interested in learning other people's stories. And so and so that makes me amazing when it comes to just really building quality relationships. And as a director of business development, this has actually helped me to put my company at the forefront of our industry. Because if you look at the impact of my love of connecting with people, it's just really easy for me to identify what others are looking for and how I can help them. I kind of digress there, but yeah.
No, so A, don't talk yourself down. First of all, you had the courage to speak up when nobody else wanted to speak up. So like, bask in that glow and glory for a second. And second of all, that was really good. So one of the things I noticed, and this is the third time again I present this in the last 8 days. And when I call on people and they start, they usually go. So, you know, one thing I'm really good at that I love doing, right, is this. I'm really good at it, and I love it, and this is why. And it's because you're all in this state where you're trying to get it right, and you're trying to think about it. This is where practice over time is going to completely change your presentation. So a piece of advice that I give people is I say, when you're thinking of talking to others about what you love, try picturing doing it with somebody or doing it the last time you loved doing it. So Aurelia, that might look something like saying, you know, something I love doing is connecting with people, is building relationships with people. And you're thinking about the last time you jumped on the phone with a quasi stranger. And by the end of the call, you're like, wait, like, give me a second. I'm going to put you in touch with this person, this person, this person, this person. And you just felt like this massive super connector. And you just know that you brought so much value. And it feels so wonderful and empowering to help other people. And yes, I'm, you know, half Italian. So like, I get really gushy. This can be done. I can bring this down. I can call on my inner introvert. And what this might look like in a much calmer version is, you know, one thing I love doing is connecting people. I just really, there's something about speaking to a human being and getting to know them, and first building a relationship with them myself, but then figuring out how to connect them to other people who can help them. And you see, I'm much less emotive. I'm much less Italian. My hands even started moving less, but that passion is still there. And then you shift. And the thing is, you're actually really good at this. And I want to challenge you all, when you say you're really good at something, smile. Not because you should smile because, you know, why so sad, but because you're amazing at something. Like, this should feel great to be amazing at something. But it also helps dispel some of the insecurities. When we smile, we start shutting down some of that fight or flight response. So they can come in and say, and I do this now. I've learned how to say, at the very least, I started with my therapy because I knew I was a really good therapist by the time I started saying this. And I would tell people, I'm really good at what I do. I really am. And so I know who I want to work with, and I know when I can change somebody's life, and I know when I can't. But if I tell somebody who's been miserable for years that I can come in and I can change their life, it's because I know I can. And then I have to reassure them. I have to make them believe what I know is true, which is really, I promise you, you do not need to feel this way, right? And I feel pride in being really good at something. And I would like you to feel that pride. So you have this, and I'm really good at this. And here's what it means. Because I'm good at connecting people, you know, as a woman who does in this role of I am able to build connections and relationships for my organization. Humans are social animals. That ability is key, is essential to our ability to build trust and to create like long-standing, thriving business relationships with people, especially in the world of finance, right? So I've just talked to you about impact, because it's not just that I'm good at building connections, it's that building connections is the key to building relationships. Relationships is the key to building trust. Building trust is the key to building a customer base, right? A lot of women will talk about imposter syndrome and how they walk into these positions that they've totally earned. They are talented enough to step into those positions, and they start doubting themselves. This way of articulating your value can sometimes help, will help over time, will help with undermining or with addressing, hey, Amy, imposter syndrome, because the first two pieces of this value articulation process are factually based. It's not you blowing smoke. It's not you selling yourself. It's not you pretending anything. Fact, you love doing whatever you just said you love doing. Fact, you are really good at it. If you're going to say I'm really good at something, you better be able to prove it at the very least to yourself. You won't necessarily in an interview process or when you're networking with somebody or when you're picking up the phone need to prove it to them. But you need to be able to prove to yourself that you're really good at this, right? So those two things are facts. Facts. Anybody who has this skill could have this impact, right? You're not saying, I'm the only person who can help build those relationships for my bank, and therefore create the trust that is needed to like build a client base, right? And get people to trust us with their money. That's not what you're saying. You're saying because this skill exists, because I happen to possess it, this is the response to that skill. This is what the skill provides. That impact is universal. And if we can sit there and remind ourselves, I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm just speaking the truth. I love this. I love it so much that when I talk about it, I get this stupid perma grin on my face, right? And because I get the stupid perma grin, you get the perma grin too, right? And I get gushy, and maybe I get a little bit verbose. I'm always verbose, but maybe I get even more verbose, right? That I am really good at it. And maybe in the beginning, you're not at that place where you can actually say, I'm really good at it, but you practice this enough. I guarantee that the things you're really good at, you will learn to say, I'm really good at it without cringing, without feeling guilt or discomfort. Yeah. Anybody who is really good at this skill could achieve this kind of impact, right? So there's one last step. And the 14 or so minutes I'm up to have conversations after this, I don't have a hard stop, but I will make sure that the presentation piece of it is done in 14 minutes. The last piece, it's about making it matter to them. And anybody who has ever done any marketing or branding will recognize this piece, right? It is not enough to explain to somebody that you are amazing. It is not enough to explain to somebody that this skill that you're amazing at can have an impact. You have to be able to explain to them specifically how you being able to make that impact is going to change their life. So there are two ways in which we discuss this in marketing. And I actually don't have a marketing background, but I love marketing because it's all psychology, right? So one, you talk to people about how you will remove pain, or two, you talk to people about how you will make them or help them reach their dreams or their goals. Okay. So think of, these are iPods, and it's ridiculous because I'm an Android girl when it comes to my phone, and I'm a Mac woman when it comes to my computers. I have the Pixel earbuds. They are so And apparently I only have one, which means my kids stole one of mine. They're so well designed. They're so comfortable. And as long as I have my Pixel phone on or an Android-based device, the sound quality is amazing. However, on Macs, they don't work with Zoom. With Zoom, there's all kinds of distortion, and only with Zoom. I could listen to music, but those on my Macs would be fine. So I had to go and buy these. Apple does not sell its iPod. No, what are they called? They're not iPods. Whatever. It's headphones.
AirPods, yeah.
AirPods. Thank you very much. They do not sell their AirPods by getting you to recognize the name AirPod. Let's just start there clearly. Or by telling you that the plastic has a certain level of integrity, that they're using the best microprocessors, that they have X amount of holes. Although if you research that technical information, it will be there. The same way, you should not be walking into any kind of networking opportunity or interview and talk about your technical background and your technical makeup, right? They don't even sell these to you by explaining how the components that they use have higher sound quality, right? And have less distortion. Although if you want to geek out on that, that information is out there, right? So just like you, that information should be out there in the world and available. The reason I bought these is because they allow me to hear and be heard in any situation. That is the problem they solve for me. In the midst of a pandemic, it was so tiring to wear my headphones, which I love, my big Bose headphones over my ears all day long. And unfortunately, there was distortion with Zoom, and Zoom is my preferred medium for this kind of event and for just connecting with clients. So the Pixel Buds didn't work. And these have noise canceling. They're the AirPod Pros. So when everybody's going crazy upstairs, it blocks out the sound. And I'm a little ADD, so I really need the sound to be blocked out, because although you might not be able to hear it because I can calibrate it so you don't hear them, I hear them and it distracts me. I bought these not because it's the best plastic, not because they have the sleekest design, although they do fit in pretty nicely, not because they have the best microprocessors. I bought them because they allow me to be heard and to hear in all situations. That is the problem they solve for me, right? So when you're articulating your values, you start off by being fascinating. Talk about what you love. Talk about, sorry, I got talking about AV. I got distracted by somebody going, I couldn't get in, is there a recording? There will be recording. Talk about what you love. Talk about why you're amazing at it. And then connect the dots for the people you're talking to, because they're busy and some of them are lazy. And some of them just might not understand how that skill translates into some kind of meaningful impact. And then you have to make it relevant for them, right? Then you really have to hit the heart, the gut piece. That wasn't the fascination piece. Being fascinating starts getting the emotional piece in. This does the end of the job. So this last piece is the only piece that is truly 100% audience specific. You have to know who you're talking to and how you walking into their life with this thing that you love doing, that you're so good at, that can have this impact, how that is going to change something significant for them. I'm going to give you an example with my skills, and then as I do this, somebody think about who wants to be the next brave soul. So I might say, you know, one thing I love doing is making instant connections with people. I am that woman who, I mean, if given the chance, I'll have a book and I'll just read for a whole flight, because books are my favorite thing in the world. But if you start talking to me, I will totally engage with you and have an hour-long conversation with you on an airplane. And by the end of that conversation, I'll know more about you than you ever thought you would tell a stranger on an airplane. And I'm actually really good at this because I'm good at building rapport. And because I can build rapport, I can easily walk into what would otherwise be uncomfortable situations and get people to feel comfortable and get people to bring their guard down and make connections, right? What that means for you what that means for you. And if I'm talking to a woman I'm going to try to coach or a leader I'm consulting with, this last piece is going to change. So if I'm talking to a woman I might try to coach, as I say, what that means for you is I'm actually really good at knowing who I can work with and who I'm not a good fit for. But once I'm working with somebody I know really well, I can get to a place where you are going to trust me. And because you trust me, I'm going to get you to do things that otherwise would have felt uncomfortable, that otherwise you might not have had the courage to do, because I'm going to tell you you can do it and you're going to trust me. And what that means is we're going to shorten the path to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. And that is something I can guarantee. And I've practiced this enough that I can actually guarantee that and not feel too uncomfortable, right? If I'm talking to a leader at a company, I might say, and what that means for you is, and I'll use a specific example that's come up recently. I can walk into that team of women that you said you're struggling with and talk to each one of them and get to the bottom of what's going on and why they're not getting along. And I can get them to a place where at the very least, if they don't trust each other, they can trust me and we can work through this and I can get you back to a place where your team is actually doing what they're supposed to do and showing up the way they're supposed to show up and the reason you hired them, which is because they're all top level, high performing women. Right? So no more waking up in the morning and having a headache of watching these women argue or hearing complaints from your team about how they're not getting along. You can get your work done, they can get their work done. Right? So first of all, before I call on a brave soul, and Nettie, I saw you had your hand up. So if you're volunteering,
I was gonna try to volunteer. I mean,
yes.
I might not be good at this, but I'm gonna try it.
Okay.
So I think it is uncomfortable to try to tell people how good you are at something without sounding like you're being very braggadocious about it. So I think I'm going to try it now, and I may falter, so just forgive me. But I would probably, what I want to say is I would probably sound something like, I really enjoy building cultures on teams. And I've had experiences across my 20 years at the company of increasing employee engagement by at least 30%, which also increases production. And so I think I'm really good at understanding the what drives people, what drives teams, and bringing them closer together. I don't know if that sounds right or what, but that's what I would try to do.
You're so bad with each other. This is just like, I must be screwing up. I must be screwing up. Am I doing this perfectly? Because I didn't do it perfectly. Can you just, right? It's good enough. It's a great start. Here's the thing. You're justifying. And you can tell what you said. It's so uncomfortable to talk about what you do without sounding braggadocious. And so the next time you're back at 701B, you and I can go grab coffee.
Okay.
we can go to the university room and we can practice this, because the fact is you're actually really good at what you do. And in this context, you don't need to yet prove yourself, because that's on your resume. That's in your referral letters. When let's say you're at a networking event, somebody's like, well, what do you do? I mean, tell me, like, what's going on? You're not going to start talking about, well, over the last 20 years, right? So you're going to start, yeah, me. I could tell you my job title, but nah, I'm not going to go there. One thing I love doing is, and I'm actually really good at it. And because I'm good at it, I've been able to do this, or I can have this kind of impact. This is really cool for my company because it's allowing them, or it's really fantastic for my team because it's allowing them to do that. But this is just practice. Like, I have a ton of practice doing this. I do it every day, every time I have a conversation with a prospective client. I do it every day when I'm working with the women I work with to help them do it. Right? It has to be a conversation. This is not an elevator pitch. Right now it might feel like an elevator pitch, but it's not. Once you're clear about what you love, then you don't need to think about, how do I talk about what I love? If you love it, you're going to talk about it. The same way, if you have pets that you love, and I said, tell me about your dog, it's so cute. You'd be like, oh, let me tell you, when I got him, he was this big. And he tore a hole through my wall. I cannot believe that something so small could tear a hole through my wall. And you get excited. And the person would get excited and be like, oh my goodness, I need a dog. Right? They'd leave that comment, I need that dog. Right? Then talk about what you love in that same way. And again, if you're high energy, it'll be high energy. But if you're really calm, you're going to do the same thing really calm. Let me tell you, I just started paragliding. Paragliding is, there's so much freedom. You just get, it's scary when you run out, but right? If we would never question how we talk about the hobbies or the people or the pets we love. When you're talking about what you love doing at work or what makes you stand out, you're going to talk about those things in the same way. Think of specific examples. Think of people you've helped. Think of teams you've built and the joy and the recognition and all of that. That last piece is very, very specific. So let me give you that. It's not a script. It's just a structure for it, and it's the beginning structure. And once you're good at it, you don't even need to follow it. The beginning of structure is, you know, one thing I love, or I love doing is, and I'm actually really good at it. And because of that, you know, I can, we can, right? And then you're talking about the impact. You're connecting the dots for somebody. Because they might not understand how, you know, being good at connecting people is useful, or how being great at data management or analysis or learning. You know, there are a lot of people who might not understand why learning and being really good at learning, being a really good learner is actually an incredibly powerful skill at all levels, right? So it's a great entry level skill, but it's also a great leadership level skill. So you need to connect the dots. What impact do you make with that? And then if the goal of the conversation is that you're trying to be hired, that you're trying to be considered for a board position, that you want to build your social capital and you want the people in your midst to understand not just what you love and what you're good at, but how that has true value for them, how it can rock their world, right? Then you have to find a way, then you have to find a way to connect that to their pain points. If I'm being hired, I might think, okay, I'm being hired to come into this company and there's been a lot of overturn and they're hiring me to come in as a manager to work with this team that hasn't had a manager for the last 6 months. And I might talk about all my people skills and come in and say, what that means is this team that's felt, this, from what you described, has felt really untethered and adrift for the last 6 months. They're going to be able to walk into work tomorrow and finally have a sense of structure and finally be able to come together and work together so that they can continue doing X, Y, and Z. Right? Which means that you guys will be able to get back on track with your production, right? It just depends on. So
That's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, you know, the coffee will get this down, right? Anybody else want to give it a try? Okay. Okay, it's late and it's a long time. Here's the last piece I want to talk about. Understanding how to articulate your value is essential, because what I said in the beginning is true. You actually have to articulate your value dozens of times throughout a week without even realizing it. Because beyond a certain level in your career, what's going to make the difference between whether or not you're considered for an opportunity is not how hard you work. It's not how good you are at what you do. It's not your education. It's your network, right? And it's not about nepotism or people only promoting people they love or like. It's about people promoting people who they know. So think of the last time you hired a skilled worker, a plumber, an electrician, a roofer, a gardener. Did you just go into Google and say, gardener with most experience, roofer with the most amount of roofing certificates? No. You tapped into your network. Anybody hired a really good handyman lately? Because I have an uneven floor that needs to be redone. Anybody know a really good vet? Because I need a vet for my pet, right? We tap into our networks, and our networks know people, and they know certain things about people. They understand what their skills are, and then they come back. You should consider Talia. She would be perfect for this opportunity. Oh, you've got a position on your board that you're trying to fill right now? Michelle. Michelle is somebody you need to talk to. Let me put you in touch with her. Right? So it's essential that not only when you're interviewing and not only when you're networking, but when you're talking day to day, that you find a way to clearly articulate who you are and what you bring to the table. One of the ways you can do this is next time somebody compliments you for doing something really well at work, instead of saying it was nothing or thank you and leaving it at that, explain to them exactly how you did it. I really appreciate you noticing that. I actually really love problem solving. It's like working through a puzzle, and I love puzzles, like real puzzles, but also like strategic puzzles. And in order to solve this, I had to do these things, and I'm so glad it was successful. Right? So thanks to that, we as a team were able to da 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 da. Right? And now you've just let this person who came to you to tell you that you were awesome understand exactly why you were awesome and how you were awesome. And the next time they have a problem to solve, hopefully you've crouched that awesomeness. It's a very Californian presentation right here. You've crouched that awesomeness in terms of skills that you love, things that you want to be remembered for. The next time they have to solve a problem that requires those skill sets, the ones that you love doing that you're really good at, you're the person they're going to think about. I have now a new client, but she wasn't at the time. We had just talked. Apply for a CEO position. And when I first talked to her, she wasn't going to. She was looking potentially for a coach, and then we decided not to work together at the time. But I told her, you need to apply for that CEO position. And so you got nothing to lose, right? Either you're the right woman for the job and you get it, and that's fantastic because this is one of your goals to become a CEO, or you don't, and then you learn what the interview skills and what the interview process is like for a CEO position. And she got all the way to the final interview. She lost the position. And the feedback she got from the recruiter is, what happened? You stopped talking about why you were the best woman for the job. The other woman, she talked about why she was the best woman for the job, and that's why she got it. And my now client said, Alessandra, I know that other woman, she's amazing, but I am far better positioned for this job than her. I said, yeah, and you blew it, but that's okay, because you'll never make that mistake again, right? We have to learn how to speak about who we are and what we bring to the table without shame, without guilt, without discomfort. It's hard, it's a skill. Starting with, you know what I love, allows you to then say, and I'm great at it, or I'm really talented, or I'm really skilled, with far less discomfort initially. But don't stop there. Explain the impact and then make it personal. You're going to use that recency and that primacy effect, right? Primacy, the things that you hear first are often the ones you remember. Recency, the things that you hear last are often the ones you remember. So they're going to remember two things. You made them feel really excited for a minute in the midst of a really boring networking or interviewing process, and you can solve a problem for them. The technical piece in the middle, it was great too, but it was just a bridge to these people. Okay, ladies, I totally did not hold to my promise of ending exactly at 5:30. It is 5:36 Pacific Standard Time. I am willing to stay on for any questions, but that is it. Everybody who registered, I will be sending you a link of the recording. Plus, I'll also be sending you a handout with these 3 steps on it. And anyone who wants to connect with me and talk about their value articulation, I really do love doing this. Like, I think it's so much fun when you finally get somebody to a place where they, like, it just flows and they feel comfortable with it. And then to watch them use it and actually succeed with it, I get teary-eyed when I get super emotional, so I'll stop, but it's fantastic. I do mean it when I do mean it when I say it is, I invite you to come back and just let me know how you're using it. And I will open it up to any questions you might have right now.
I don't have a question, but I just want to make a comment that this was amazing, and I'm going to practice it even though it still feels very uncomfortable. So just thank you so much.
You're welcome, Nettie. It was very nice to see you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Talia.
Thank you, Alessandra.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you for spending an hour with me this evening.
It was helpful. Talk later.
Bye.
You.
Hey, Alessandra, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So, as it turns out, I actually have an interview. It's actually with a head of a
Do you
recruiting
want me to
agent.
stop recording, or do you want it recorded? Let me ask you.
No,
that.
it's okay. You can record it. It's an interview with that head of a recording or a head of a recruiting agency. So it's not that with the employer. But the timing is really good for me to be talking about this. One of the questions that I have for you is, a job description is long, and, it's asking you to be great at 50 things. And so if I'm leading with, well, I'm really great at blank, or I really love blank and I'm really good at it, and here's why it's going to be great that's going to be great for you. In theory, there are a lot of those that I need to cover at some point in the conversation, right? So, do I choose the one thing that I love the most that's also of the most benefit, that covers checks the most boxes? Or is, I kind of think of it as, what is the one core skill that the person in this job needs to have in order to win?
Yeah.
Like for the organization is sort of how I would think about it. And do I have that? Can I back into it?
Well, I'll give you two answers. When
Okay.
I work with people long enough and we're working on their branding, we might have 2 or 3 things. So I have a client right now whose background is an engineer, but she's in finance. And upon talking to her, it was very clear that there's 3 things that she loves doing that she's really good at, that would allow her to position herself in general for this shift in her career. So not she's trying to get hired by a new company, that's important, but she's also asking for a shift. And so what we've worked on with her is being really clear about what those 3 things are and figuring out a conversational way of saying it. So you might say, there are 3 things that I love doing, this, and this. And I'm actually really good at each one of them. And because of that, and then she'll go with those 3 skills, because for her, she loves reading and distilling, a little bit like Hitomi, technical manuals and technical articles, and then extracting the most important and relevant data. Right? That's one thing she does. And then the other thing is she's actually really good at seeing opportunities that other people don't see, and data that people have been staring at for years. And then the third thing she has is she's very gutsy. Right. And in the world of finance, this is not always a given. And in the world of engineers, it isn't always a given either. So she's willing to take risks. And so she creates a narrative around those things. Right. I'm really good at these 3 things. I love these 3 things, and I'm really good at them. And that means that I can first of all, I can digest all this technical data, and she wants to be doing investments in tech. I can really quickly see opportunities that other people aren't seeing and take action on that. And thanks to that, her investments don't just meet the benchmark, they're above the benchmark, right? And always. And she now has proven data for that if she needs to. Right. So you might think about this job that you're looking at and say, here are all the job requirements, but what's the job really? For somebody to be truly successful at this job, what do they need to be able to do? Right? What are they going to be at? What kind of problems are they going to be asked to solve? What kind of role do they need to fulfill, and why? And then think about the things that you love doing, that you're really good at, and construct a narrative around that. So somebody might say, well, tell us about you and what made you choose to apply for this job. And you might say, Well, let me start with what made me choose to apply to this job. One of the things that I love doing is this, or I really have a passion for the following 3 or 4 things. And because, and on top of being passionate about them, I'm actually really good at them. And because of that, I'm able to da 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 da. And looking at this job, it seems like what you're looking for is somebody who can step in and solve these problems for you. And that is exactly what I believe I can do with this skill set. Right? Because you're right, you can't hit all 50 different things that are part of a job, but any one job just basically has some functions. If you're lucky, you are in a position where an interview is truly an interview. I think you and I have talked about this before, right? Where like it's a two-way thing. They're supposed to be wooing you too. So you've gotten them to talk a little bit about the headache that is not having you or the best person in this position, or specific goals that they have, or objectives, or dreams, or problems. And so then as you're talking to them, you can even stop and say, let me think about, based on what you've told me, and you can use that time in that interview to slow down and think about the response you're going to give them. You don't need to have all the answers. This isn't a canned response. So I might talk to somebody and go, these are the things I love doing. And give me a second. You mentioned this, 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 and this. Because I love doing these things and I'm good at it, and because this is the impact we can have with those kinds of skills, I really think I can help you answer these problems. Right? It's okay to stop and not know all the answers and just show them what your thinking process is in the midst of an interview. The passion piece is really important. I see people walk into interviews and they're so nervous. But I think about the interviewers, and they're interviewing one person after the next, and we know that actually AI is far better at interviewing than humans. AI is far better at interviewing than humans, but nobody wants to be selected just on what AI says about their resume and their background, their history. We don't trust that as humans. We think humans are better at interviewing than computer algorithms. But humans are terrible at interviewing because we are so influenced by personal social factors. And that is why, not being manipulative, just being a human, it is really important to walk in and to create a shift in emotion, to create a shift in the space when you talk to somebody. And I don't want to do that by bullshitting anybody and pretending that I love the stuff they love, or trying to be uber likable. I want to do that by coming in and letting them know what I'm about and being really excited about the things that I am good at. And if they're not into that, well, you know, when you need a job, it sucks. But at the same time, like, I probably wouldn't survive working for a company that isn't into the things that make me outstanding and excited. Right? And every once in a while, we have to give in to that. That's okay. But we all know that those jobs are never going to keep very long. And so we'll be back in this interviewing like rigmarole within 2 years. Does that help answer some of that, Heather?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, the only question that just popped into my head is, so often I think they're expecting this answer, which is the why us, like, you know, that you're always supposed to incorporate the why we're so great, you know, like into that, rather than, you know, like, I'm here to solve problems for you, and I'm, you know, here to lend my value to the rest of the group, right? So I'm, you know, a lot of times that why question has so much to do with, you know, tell us why we're so great.
And I think you can do it still with us, right? It ends up being like, tell us why you chose us. Well, let me tell you, because I love doing these things and I'm really good at them. And what I see of your company is that this is exactly the kind of stuff I would do. And if I wanted to lay it on, because sometimes you got to lay it on in an interview process, I might say something like, you know, and I think you guys are amazing at giving these opportunities to do that. And I can really see how you are going to, you know, you're leading the way, whatever. The problem is, even as I say that, I kind of like, right? Except that you're right. Part of it is unfortunately still a game, but ultimately, if you think about it, why is it that people need to hear that why is it that the companies want to hear that you're choosing them because you think they're exceptional? And the answer is because they want to know that you really, really want them. It's like going on a date. You want to go on a date with somebody who's like, yeah, you checked all the boxes, or somebody who goes like, not only did you check all the boxes, I think you're really hot. Like there's something about you, I can't get it, but oh my goodness, I have to meet you.
Yeah.
If I come in and say, I want to work with you because you're going to allow me to do the things I love doing, because it's part of what you are, it's part of your brand, it's part of the role, it's part of, I've just expressed my infatuation with them. But I've done it in a way where I'm actually highlighting why I'm perfect for them. Oftentimes, you know, whether you're buying a house or whether you're interviewing for a job, people will say like, hold your cards close to your, whatever the expression in English is. I think a French one, like hold your cards close, right? Don't let them know that you're too eager. And I'm like, I think that's a mistake. Because negotiation is negotiation. When you get to the point where you have to negotiate with somebody what your salary, what the terms of your employment are going to be, that's a different phase. In the interview phase, it's an infatuation phase, about falling in love. You want them to know that that you are the best person. You want them to feel that. You want them to feel excited. You want them, when you walk out of the room, to want to run after you to offer you the job. And you only want to do that with a job where you're dying for them to do the same, to do exactly that. Right? Once you've both decided that you really love each other, that you're a match made in heaven, then we get to the nitty-gritty of the marriage contract, right? And who gets what and how things happen. And that's a different phase. I'm all about being like wearing my emotions on my sleeve and being very clear about what excites me and why I want to work with somebody. And if that person is going to try to screw me over because they've realized I love that, then it's not a company I want to work for. Right? It doesn't matter if I'm giving up a consulting gig, like I don't want to work for you. If you want to take advantage of the fact that I'm excited to be with you, then you're not a company I want to work with me. It's going to really sting and suck to lose that contract. But in the long run, I don't do that. Right? Yeah. I mean, I have in the past. There are times in life where you have to do that. But ideally, we all want to get to a place where we don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to say you've got a pulse, you've got a problem. Okay, I can work, right?
Yeah, thank you.
When stop recording,